and also how much of a need there is. In other words, in which level of the spectrum are they? Okay? Then I have to define if there is an appetite for reform. You cannot push somebody to do something unless they want it. Now, appetite for reform is twofold. Indeed, appetite for reform. I have a vision. I want to see my country to change and so on. But you know, you walk around the country and you see that no one really cares. So there is only one guy that has a vision. Nobody else cares because they live with a lot. Morocco is an example. They live with a lot of money coming in from the European Union. Whether they do good or they do bad, whether they reform or don't reform, money flows in regardless for other political purposes. So it's not really a country I'd like to go work because it doesn't. I mean, I can go, but I'm not going to be effective. And being in private sector, you want to show track record, right? And you want to show successful track record, obviously. So one is the appetite of reform that I told you is defined on the vision, on the ability, on the political will. And that's where I have the distinction between myself and Hernando de Soto. So going and talking to a president of a country, yeah, sure, I mean, usually they're very excited. They talk to you about everything. But, I mean, then you leave and the door closes and he goes to the next meeting of the next 17 meetings of that day. So political will and appetite there. Legal structure. Is the legal structure, is informality, the level of difficulty really high? So I was working with Lebanon, Egypt, Morocco, Burkina Faso, Botswana, Palestinian Authority, Israel. I did an analysis of Israel as well, but they don't have a bad problem there, as obviously bad. And then I did Romania, Albania, Bulgaria. And I chose to start working in Bulgaria. Not because Bulgaria is an extraordinary country that I love very much and so on. Of course, it's neighboring to our original country, but you know, and I'm more of a Latin person rather than an Eastern European person. But they have the legal system necessary. They are super, super, super effective in their work. They're creative and they work hard. And there is a tremendous appetite for reform, to the point that I get called 6 times a day. When are you coming back to continue? When are you doing this? When are you doing that? We've already moved. We've already did this. We've already collected our data. They have all the maps. They're already waiting for me. I don't even have to hire anybody anymore. I can do it on my own at this point. So that's what I'm talking about. You need to find that type of partner, at least at the beginning. You definitely don't push it down anybody's throat. It's the worst way. And we have Greece right now. Let's see what that's going to do.
So I had a sort of follow-up question to that. So I was looking at one of the images you had in your slideshow. You had all this piles of paperwork. And you know, this week being Global Entrepreneurship Week, the whole idea of technology, integrating that. How much of, say, the more recent technology advances and getting everything digitized and records and property records, how much of that has made any difference in what you do now in the countries that you go into?
Super good question. Perfect. Irrelevant is the answer. Whether it is digital or it is manual, I do not care. There is something in technology called gig. Garbage in, garbage out. All right? If you don't fix your system, if you don't have a path that the water is going to go by, whether that path is made out of golden plates or it's made out of cement or it is made out of, you know, the latest whatever composite made in a factory. Once you fix your system, Thailand is a perfect example. Thailand has a very good property rights system. it's totally not, it's all manual. They have about 100,000 transactions a day. You know, all together, the registers together, in their main big cities. It doesn't really matter. But the reason I'm saying, you're coming from the Philippines. I worked in the Philippines. The Philippines would be a country I wouldn't want to go with family with. The first thing they did, and not the Philippines, but it's the consultants that go in from our big organizations. When you do have high levels of difficulty, what they would suggest is we need to computerize all these papers. You create even more of a problem because where are you computerizing it to? To which files are you putting them? According to the legal systems that exist right now, these papers have they are secured legally somehow. The moment they get digitized, there has to be a different legal infrastructure. I mean, in Peru, I digitized, but I digitized at the bottom, you know, at the end of the line. And then we had to create a constitutional amendment that would allow, we had to bring in lawyers from God knows where to figure out how that digital information cannot be leaked, cannot be copied, cannot be, because it's soft, you can move it, right? And you can actually create corruption that can go up the wazoo. Before you had a little corruption, now you cannot really control it. And what I was really surprised in the Philippines was exactly that. Like they had started from right there at the end. And it was not the Filipinos who poor people, it was like the consultant's suggestion. And it's the easy thing to do. And they had forgotten the 14 agencies, in Philippines 19 agencies. The 19 agencies, hundreds of years that you had to go through all of them, goodness gracious. It was complicated. I hope I answered your question.
Just a couple questions actually. I'm just curious, in one of those charts, after a country was systemized, I guess, put on a system, did the demographics change? Did people start having more kids? Was that ever looked at, or did, no?
It's usually known that when a country grows economically, there is an economic welfare increase, the number of children get reduced. Something else we noticed is the number of divorces were increased. But it's not that the divorces were actually increased. People were not separating more after than before. They were separated, it just had not been registered. Okay? People were also more, there were more people married. Not getting married, they were married, but they registered their marriage.